God is calling each of us to do something about the brokenness, the darkness, and the fallenness of this world. Just as he called Moses, God calls us. And if we sit around and complain about the world's situation without doing anything about it, we're not being faithful to that calling. It's not just preachers. Every laity has a calling to do something about the hatred, the fear, the anger that's out here in that world. Now today, we're going to look at Moses and his reaction. You know, growing up in Sunday school, you were probably taught what a wonderful man Moses was. But if you go back and you read those stories again, you'll notice Moses struggles with his calling. He doesn't want to do it. And for several verses, for several chapters in Exodus, when God calls him, Moses argues with God, "No, God, go find someone else. I'm not a great public speaker. Who am I to go before Pharaoh? Who am I to stand before the King of Kings and challenge him to do anything? Who am I? I'm nothing, God." You can understand why Moses might believe that. He grew up as a half Egyptian, half Hebrew. Neither group really likes him. His very name, Moses, is an Egyptian name. It means son of, but there's no ending to it or no beginning. Have you ever heard of a guy named Thutmoses? He's a famous pharaoh. He's the son of Thut. And many of the pharaohs in Egyptian history carried the name of the god that they related to. Moses is an Egyptian name, and yet he doesn't know to whose God he belongs to. He's kind of a man without a country. And yet now this mysterious whisper claiming to be the God of Abraham and Jacob and Isaac comes to him in a burning bush and says, "Moses, you are going to go to Egypt and free my people." And Moses says, "No, I'm not. Who am I to do that?" And it's a very funny exchange for several chapters of God and Moses going back and forth. "Yes, you are going, Moses." "No, I'm not, God. I'm not a great speaker. I'm not very powerful. I'm scared." And he just one excuse after another of why he ain't going. And really, finally, the only thing that gets him to go is God basically threatens him and says, "You will go or I'm going to smite you." And Moses says, "Well, fine, I'll go, but it ain't going to work." And of course, today's scripture, he gets down there with his brother Aaron. They confront Pharaoh thinking, "Okay, God, I stepped out in faith. I did exactly what you wanted me to do. I confronted him and I made a demand. Pharaoh, let my people go." And Pharaoh said, "You Hebrews are just a bunch of lazy bums. Maybe what we need to do is take away your straw so that you can't make bricks very successfully, so that you'll have to work overtime in order to fulfill your quota." And Pharaoh orders the straw to be taken away. And of course, the Hebrews go to Moses and they say, "How dare you? Look what you've done to us. You've made our lives even more miserable. You should have just left the man alone." And Moses turns around, goes to God and says, "I told you so. This is exactly what would have happened." Everybody's mad at everybody else because Moses, his first outing out to confront Pharaoh, he's a complete and utter failure. And he tells God, "I told you this in the beginning. You picked the wrong guy. You shouldn't have sent me. You should have sent someone else." Now, there's a thing in psychology called the imposter syndrome. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, maybe it's just me. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had a dream that I didn't pass a certain class in high school, and everything from then on has been fake. And I've got to either go back and pass this class. It's usually a math class, and there's no way I'd ever pass it. And I wake up feeling like a big fake. You ever have those dreams, or is that just me? It's called the imposter syndrome. 70% of the people have it. They feel that they're not qualified, they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the ability. They believe that they're just faking it, and sooner or later somebody's going to come and call them out and say, "You shouldn't be here because you don't know what you're doing." You ever felt like that? I feel like that a lot. I just don't know what I'm doing. I went to a school in Russellville, Arkansas Tech University. You look outside the buildings and all you see are cows, if that tells you what kind of college it is. After graduating Arkansas Tech with a history degree and a philosophy degree, I felt the call to ministry. Well, my grandmother felt it, my minister felt it, and they kind of pressured me. This is what you need to do. And I'm like, oh no, that's the last thing I want to do. And they got me to go down to look at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. And I said, okay, I'll try this out. There's no way in heck I'm ever going to be accepted into this huge college in the middle of downtown Dallas. These people are really smart. And somehow I got accepted, and I felt like a complete fake. It's like, I don't know how I did this. And then when we moved in, I don't know, do you have siblings? Maybe your siblings are like this. My older brother, he drove me down there to carry my stuff. And as we're unpacking the car and he's going through the graduate dorm, you know, there are lawyers, there's people working on their MBA. They're from Manhattan, Chicago, Los Angeles. These are people that went to elite private schools. They're the cream of the crop. And my brother, God bless his heart, because this is what he always does to me. As we're walking down through those dorms and these girls are sitting there, he goes, and in a very loud southern voice that he could muster, "Gosh, little brother, there sure are some pretty women here." Now, I was already feeling like I was faking my way into SMU, and now he just really made me feel like I was faking my way. Some Arkansas hick surrounded by all these people. And there I was, feeling this tall, like I was an imposter. My first semester, first big paper in Old Testament studies was on Exodus, the I am statement where Moses says, God, you have to tell me your name. And God comes up with this really weird name. I am who I am, or I will be who I need to be, or we translate it as Yahweh. And it's a very cryptic and mysterious name. And my Old Testament professor said, now, I want you to take that name and I want you to write an 8-page paper on what that name means. So I went and I spent hours upon hours in the library researching commentaries. I wrote what I thought was one of the best papers in my life, and I got a C on it. It's first paper. Now, I really thought, I have no business being here. I am not smart enough. I am not creative enough. Somehow I faked my way into this college, this seminary, this graduate program, and he just gave me a C, and pretty soon he's going to tell me, you don't need to be here because you don't have the brains for this. And then the second semester came, and that was the preaching class. Now, I don't like public speaking. I know I do it a lot, but that's not really what I'm comfortable doing. I avoided classes in undergrad where you had to give presentations because of that. And there, my second semester, we had to give our sermon in front of a group of about 30 people, plus your preaching professor. And of course, I had drawn the Reverend Dr. Zan Holmes. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's in Houston. He's one of the greatest African-American preachers there were. This guy could raise the rafters. He was brilliant. He could hook you. He could move you. And I had him as a preaching professor. First sermon, interestingly enough, was about the call of Moses. And I got up, and I am sweating like a pig. And I give this sermon, and I'm reading the manuscript because there is no way I could do this without looking up. And I shared that sermon, and when it was over, I left the room as fast as I could, went to the water fountain, splashed cold water on my face, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm packing my bags. I'm getting out of here. God, you made a mistake. I was not the one you should have called. And Reverend Dr. Zan Holmes came out of that classroom with his little cup of coffee, and he walked down to me, and he looked me in the eye for the longest time. Now, have you ever had a professor just look you up and down? Look at you real intently? You know how you feel, how small you feel? Oh, God, he's about to break it to me. I have no business being here. I know this. And he goes, Blake, that's one of the best sermons I've heard. And you talk about a feeling of relief, that a vindication that, okay, God, maybe you do want me here. Moses feels like that. How many of you have felt like that in a situation where God has put you someplace and you just felt so inadequate, so weak, so small that you just kept saying to God, you picked the wrong person. You shouldn't have picked me. And that's what Moses feels in our stories today. When he argues with God, no, God, I'm not the guy you want to send to confront Pharaoh. I'm a man of little strength. The Hebrews hate me. The Egyptians hate me. I can't speak very well. That's why I like Moses, because he had trouble with public speaking. And when God builds him up and, pumps, the courage into him and sends him to Pharaoh, that first outing, he's a miserable failure. Now the Hebrews hate him even more, and the Pharaoh especially hates him. And he feels this tall, and he thinks, what am I doing here? Because Moses feels like an imposter. And if you read through the book of Exodus, you'll see time and time again, Moses never feels up to the task. And he simply has to go back to what God told him in the first place. When Moses says, God, you have to tell me your name. And he asked this because what's in a name? When you know someone's name, you know their power, their ability. Pharaoh and Moses, they grew up together. And Moses knew the names of all the Egyptian gods. There was the god of the Nile. There was the god of death, the god of judgment, the god of the wheat, the god of the sun, the god of the night. They all had these names, and Moses knew their names and what they did. And when he says, God, if you're going to send me, tell me who you are. And God does that cryptic, well, Moses, I will be who I need to be. And if you've read the plague story in Exodus, a little hint, each of those plagues are directed against a particular Egyptian god to show Pharaoh who really is in charge. Oh, the god of the Nile, let me show you how puny and weak you are. I'll turn the water to blood. And that's the name God gives Moses. I will be who I need to be. And Moses, I don't care if you think you're weak. I don't care if you think you're not that smart or you don't have any strength. The only thing that matters, Moses, is my promise that I will be with you. And I will be whatever it is I need to be in order for you to fulfill your calling. Ever heard that saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. We all have a calling. Our world is a pretty screwed up place. There is too much fear, too much anger, too much hatred. We're called to do something about that. And we often shirk from that because we think, well, God, who am I to do anything about all this? These problems seem insurmountable. They're overwhelming. Who am I? And we go back to the beginning of Exodus and we look at those 4 women who were named, who in their own way did their thing in order to undermine Pharaoh. We too have that calling to undermine the powers of darkness, the powers of hate, the powers of anger and fear. We have that calling, and in our own way, we can do something about it. If we're willing to believe not in ourselves, but in the God who resides within our hearts. The God who says to us over and over, I will be with you always, even to the ends of the earth. My challenge for you this week is to go home and think about your calling. God is whispering to all of you, summoning you, Maybe it's not through a burning bush, something as dramatic as that, but God is calling you to do something in your workplace, in your neighborhood, amongst your family. And I know it can be overwhelming and scary, and yet God simply tells us, don't worry about it. I'll be with you. And I'll be whatever it is I need to be in order for you to succeed. Think about that. Think about your calling and how you might change this world. May we pray. God, we never feel up to the task. We never feel worthy enough. We never feel that we have the ability or the strength or the courage to follow where you call us to go. And yet you never called the qualified. You always qualified the called. Through those simple fishermen, those tax collectors, prostitutes, and sinners, through the least, the last, and the lost, it was these people who built your kingdom, who followed you bravely. God, we live in fallen times. And each of us in our own way, we can transform this world. We can make a difference. We can be the light, the salt, and the yeast that changes everything. But God, we cannot let our fears stop us from being the people that you've called us to be. Whisper to us again your holy name. Whisper to us again the promise that wherever we may go, that you will be with us always and everywhere. For when we are your people, and when we do live up to our calling, we literally can move mountains and make a difference in the life.